There's been a lot of talk about AI lately. All of the different tools out there, different ways to optimize your workflow, different ways to set up orchestration, all of these big words. But I want to take a step back and start at the very beginning. How do we actually get started? It's actually much simpler than it might seem. We'll walk through the basics, set up an account, and make our very first request in just the next couple of minutes. All right, let's start by talking about what's actually out there. I think the big three that you've probably heard about are ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. And if you've spent any time looking into which one to use, you've probably encountered a lot of very confident opinions about why one is better than the others. But here's my honest take. For a beginner, it really doesn't matter which one you pick. You can think of it like choosing between Chrome, Safari, or Firefox as your web browser. They're all doing the same fundamental thing. Different companies built them with slightly different priorities in mind, but at the end of the day, you're still just browsing the internet. Same thing here. Under the hood, they're all LLMs, all trained on massive amounts of text data, all predicting the most likely next words, all with the same fundamental strengths and limitations. If you're curious about digging deeper into what an LLM actually is and why these tools sometimes get things wrong, definitely recommend checking out my last video. I'll link it below. If you want to pick based on which company's values align most with yours, that's totally valid. So I'll give a quick overview about the three big ones. But again, my recommendation here, if you just want to get started, is to just pick one. And then once you kind of get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to transition to a different tool if you prefer a different one instead. So the three main ones, OpenAI, these are the folks behind ChatGPT. Their main focus is on research and broad application. They were the first to market and tend to have the most name recognition. Second, we have Anthropic, who makes Claude. They are focused heavily on AI safety, so a big part of their mission is making sure that these models are helpful without being harmful. And then finally, we have Google, who makes Gemini. The other focus of theirs is deep integration with Google's existing products. So if you're already living in Google Docs and Gmail, Gemini tends to play very nicely with that. Cool. Now that we know our different options, we can pick one to start with. Once we've done that, the next step is just to create an account. I'm going to share on the screen the different websites you should go to for each respective option. You can pick whatever option you want and just paste the relevant link into your web browser, and that should drop you onto a landing page that allows you to actually create an account. Regardless of which you choose, I'd highly recommend starting with just the free tier to get the hang of things before deciding if you want to pay for anything. So go ahead and pause the video here and go through the sign up process. It's just going to ask you for your email, probably to create a password and agree to some privacy policy, but it should not ask for any credit card details yet. Awesome. So go ahead and pause this video and go sign up for that account. And that's genuinely it. Congratulations, you're in. Okay, so now that we're in, what's next? How do we actually use this? Let's make our first request together. All right, so I'm going to walk through an example of how to create our first prompt, and my tool of choice is Claude, so that's what I have open right now. But if you're on ChatGPT or Gemini, it'll look pretty similar to this. It just might be a little bit of a different view, but generally you're just going to look for this text box that'll be in the center. That's where we're going to type, and that's where we're going to start our conversations. If you don't see this, look on the left-hand side of your browser, and you'll see probably a plus button or something that says New Chat, and you can click that to get to something that looks like this. So how do we get started? We literally just type something into here and that will automatically create a chat for us. So maybe let's imagine I am going to be going on a trip with a few people and I want to find a good place to eat because I have people with dietary restrictions. Something I might do without using an AI tool or an LLM tool is maybe I would write everything down. I would maybe look on Google, maybe I would look elsewhere, maybe on Yelp, maybe on Google Maps to find some good restaurants. Then I would read through the reviews, look at all the menus to make sure it works for everyone. With ChatGPT or with Claude or with Gemini, what I can do is I can just write down everything I need and have this act as an assistant to get all that information back to me. So maybe I start with saying, okay, so here is something I'm going to paste into here. And now instead of me having to do all this work, you'll see it says searching for places because it's actually going to go around. It's going to look at everything on the internet, do everything I would have done, but consolidate it for me and come back with a great response. So cool. Here it says, my top pick for your family is this restaurant. which has some good vegetarian options. It has some gluten-free options. There's some kids menu options and also a lot of variety, and it's a good budget. Great. I like the vibe. And there's a few different options here. And then I can further go in and explore. And if I wanted to push back and say, oh, this is a bit far from where I'm staying, I actually prefer to be here, I prefer to be this time, whatever, I can go back and forth and have further conversation just within this same chat. But you'll see it's really, really cool that instead of me having to do all that individual work, I can see this here. Remember, this is just a starting point. It's a fantastic resource to get me a short list of restaurants, but LLMs can still get things wrong. So please make sure to actually click into the restaurants real quick to manually verify. It's still a win though, because instead of spending 30 plus minutes scrolling through Yelp and Google Maps, I can just spend 2 minutes verifying the top result. One quick thing I want to point out before we wrap things up here is the importance of not putting super sensitive data into these text boxes. I think a good rule of thumb is to think about, is it something that I'd feel comfortable sending in a text or an email? And if the answer is no, we probably shouldn't drop it into an LLM either. So I'm talking about things like your social security number, passwords, that kind of thing. It's probably best to skip it. But honestly speaking, in the grand scheme of things, that bar is kind of low, and most of what you'll actually use these tools for day to day doesn't come anywhere close to this bar. But for now, that rule of thumb is all you really need to keep in mind as you're using these tools. And that's it for today. You now have an account and you've made your first prompt. Congratulations, that's a huge first step. Next video, we'll talk a little bit more about a real framework for how to start weaving this into your actual daily life, because the restaurant example is honestly just the beginning. As always, please drop any questions or feedback in the comments, and if this was helpful, please follow along. New videos will be coming weekly. Thanks so much, and see you next time.